For over 6 centuries, one spirit has crossed the veil of death again and again, reborn into a new body, a new mind, yet carrying the same eternal mission. This is not folklore. This is the legacy of the Dalai Lama. In the winter of 1933, the 13th Dalai Lama, Tubten Gyatso, had passed away. But the monks knew his death was not the end. They entered deep meditation. Visions began to emerge. The letters A, Ka, Ma, and the image of a distant village. 2 years later, in a remote village of Amdo in eastern Tibet, a child was born under curious circumstances. One eye was open while the other remained closed, and, most remarkably, he did not cry. His parents named the newborn Lama Tondup, meaning wish-fulfilling deity. By the age of 2, Lama already displayed peculiar behaviors. He insisted on taking his father's seat at mealtimes and constantly begged to hear the story of his birth. Stranger still, he longed to visit Lhasa, Tibet's distant capital, despite never having seen it. One of his favorite pastimes was pretending to pack for the trip. When Lama turned 3, several strangers arrived at his family's home, posing as humble travelers in need of food and lodging. In truth, they were monks searching for the reincarnation of the 13th Dalai Lama. At one point, Lama grabbed the prayer beads from one of the monks and declared, "That's mine." The monk smiled and replied, "If you can tell me who I am, you may have it." Without hesitation, the boy answered, "Lama." Convinced they had found the reincarnation they sought, the monk's hands trembled. The monks departed, but returned days later in formal attire. This time, they brought an assortment of objects. Some were relics of the 13th Dalai Lama, while others were ordinary items meant to test Lama. One by one, he identified the items that had truly belonged to the Dalai Lama, calling them his own. He also answered personal questions only the 13th Dalai Lama would have known. Convinced, the monks pressed their palms together in reverence. "Yes," they said, "Kundun," meaning the presence, another title for the Dalai Lama. Soon, Lama and his family departed for Lhasa, though he was separated from them to begin his life in the monastic world. A senior monk named Reiting, who had envisioned Lama during meditation, gently reassured those present. "He is Avalokiteshvara. He has returned to guide the faithful of the Dharma, again and again, until every sentient being finds enlightenment." Why Avalokiteshvara? In Tibetan Buddhism, Buddha has many names and forms. Siddhartha Gautama was the historical Buddha. Amitabha represents the state of enlightenment, and Vairocana symbolizes a cosmic, all-encompassing presence, 3 aspects of one essence. To attain enlightenment, practitioners rely on Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of compassion, and Mahastama Prapta, the embodiment of wisdom. Though Lama carried the soul of the 13th Dalai Lama, he was still a young boy, often missing his mother's warmth at night. He underwent rigorous monastic training, achieving a spiritual education akin to a doctorate in Buddhist studies. By 1944, he was officially enthroned as the 14th Dalai Lama. The Nechung Oracle, a royal advisor, delivered prophecies in trance under the weight of an ornate headdress. When Lama was just 13, the oracle offered a dire warning: "Heed the words of your predecessor." He then presented a letter the 13th Dalai Lama had addressed to his own future incarnation, predicting grave trials for Tibet, political upheaval, destruction of temples, slaughter of monks, and the forced exile of the Dalai Lama himself. Before long, these ominous predictions began to materialize, and the 14th Dalai Lama would ultimately be driven from his homeland. In exile, he did not seek revenge, but refuge for his people. From the hills of northern India, he rebuilt the heart of Tibetan culture, preserving language, reviving monasteries, and guiding a scattered nation through compassion, not conflict. He became a global voice for peace, dialogue, and spiritual wisdom, reaching far beyond the borders of Tibet. Yet through it all, he remained the living embodiment of Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, offering hope to Tibetans and to the world. The question was never if the Dalai Lama would return, but where. One reincarnation followed another, guided by visions and tested by sacred ritual. But as the 14th Dalai Lama aged in exile, he spoke words that shook the foundations of Tibetan tradition. He may not return at all. If the institution is no longer relevant, he once said, it will cease to exist. This was more than a personal decision. It was a spiritual upheaval. Because if a soul that has returned for 13 lifetimes chooses to stop, what does that mean for faith, for hope, and for the continuity of Tibetan Buddhism? Meanwhile, the Chinese government declared it would appoint the next Dalai Lama, not through omens or visions, but by political authority. The Dalai Lama responded with clarity. If my reincarnation is found under China's control, that person will not be the Dalai Lama. And so, for the first time in history, this sacred cycle may not end with death, but with choice. In 1995, the Dalai Lama recognized a young boy as the next Panchen Lama, his spiritual counterpart, who helps identify the next Dalai Lama. 3 days later, the boy and his family vanished. They were never seen again. Soon after, China appointed its own Panchen Lama, a child from a politically connected family. 2 Dalai Lamas, one chosen by tradition, one by power. But only one can truly carry the soul, or perhaps none will. He has already said the chain may end with him. He also warned, if Tibet remains under occupation, his next life may not return there at all. If a child is born in secret, beyond the grasp of any government, would we even know? Could the 15th Dalai Lama already walk among us, hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? Or was the 14th truly the final rebirth? The story of the Dalai Lama's reincarnation calls us to reflect on life, faith, and compassion. Above all, embrace compassion in your everyday life. No matter what the future holds, the spirit of Avalokiteshvara endures in those who choose to care.